The air shook with the sound of thunder, but there were no clouds in the sky, only smoke and falling ash. War had returned to the planet Varellos, and no one knew why. The breeding centers, hidden deep beneath the crust, had been locked for decades. There, alien girls like Kelia were kept for one reason: to produce more soldiers for the Empire. She had been born inside one of those cages, never once seeing the sky. She didn't even know what the sun looked like. Her world was walls, machines, and the touch of cold, uncaring hands. She was not alone. Hundreds of girls lived in rows of glass cells, their lives counted only in cycles and procedures. No one spoke much. If they did, they were silenced. Over time, Kelia learned to stay quiet, but she never stopped looking. Every time the metal guards opened the cells, every time the scientists marched through the halls, she looked, hoping for a face, any face, that didn't look like it wanted to hurt her. Then one day, everything changed. Explosions rocked the ceiling. Cracks formed in the thick dome overhead. The lights blinked red. The guards shouted in panic. For the first time in years, the doors weren't opening for testing, they were kicked open from the outside. Kelia pushed herself to the edge of her glass cell, heart pounding. It wasn't her imagination. She heard weapons she'd never heard before. Quick, sharp. Not like the sonic blasters the guards used. Then came voices deep. Human voices. She didn't understand the words, but she could feel it. They were different. Alive. A group of soldiers rushed into the breeding facility, covered in thick armor with strange symbols painted in blue and gold. Kelia didn't know what they meant, but she didn't care. These men didn't look like the gray-skinned scientists or the cruel guards. One of them had something in his eyes she had never seen before: hesitation. He stopped in front of her glass cell, looked at her. Actually looked at her. Kelia pressed her hand to the glass. He didn't turn away. He didn't sneer. He raised his hand and pressed it against hers, separated only by the clear wall. "Get this one open," the soldier called out. His voice was rough, but there was no hatred in it. Another soldier ran over and scanned the console. "It's a Class Z cell. It needs override codes." The first man looked straight at Kelia again. "What did they do to you?" The facility shook again. Something exploded nearby. Alarms screamed. "We don't have time," someone yelled. The man pulled a tool from his belt. Sparks flew as he cut into the panel. Kelia didn't move. She should have been afraid. But she wasn't. She felt something else: hope. When the door hissed open and the glass slid away for the first time in her life, Kelia didn't run. She stepped forward slowly, eyes never leaving his. The human knelt to her level. "Can you walk?" She nodded. Her legs were weak, but she would walk. She would run if it meant escaping this place. He wrapped her in a soft thermal cloak. The warmth felt like magic. She clutched it tightly, not wanting to let go. "Name's Ethan," he said. "You're safe now." Kelia opened her mouth to speak, but the words didn't come. Her throat was dry. Her voice, unused. Still, she managed one word: "Kelia." They moved quickly after that. Ethan led her through corridors lit by flames and gunfire. Other soldiers covered them, shouting orders, clearing paths. They weren't just rescuing her. She saw other girls too, taken from their cages, each looking as stunned and confused as she had. But none of them stuck to Ethan's side the way Kelia did. Outside, for the first time, Kelia saw the sky. It was dark smoke and fire everywhere, but even that was beautiful to her. She looked up, breathing real air. Her lungs hurt. Her eyes watered, but she smiled. She had been freed. And the human hadn't touched her the way the others had. He hadn't treated her like a tool. He treated her like a person. Kelia didn't understand it yet, but something deep inside her was changing, not just because she had escaped, but because Ethan had looked at her like she mattered, And somewhere deep inside that broken facility, something else stirred. The war was not over. Someone powerful had noticed her missing. And they were coming to take her back. Kellia sat quietly inside the dropship, her legs pulled close to her chest. The engine hummed beneath her, steady and strong. It was her first time feeling real motion that didn't involve chains or needles. Soldiers moved around her, checking weapons, sealing wounds, speaking into radios. None of it made sense to her, but one thing did. Ethan was still near. He stood by the door, his eyes scanning the sky through a small window. Even after everything, he hadn't left her side. Every time someone came close, her body tensed. But when Ethan looked at her, she felt still. Safe. He didn't try to touch her. He didn't even stare. He just gave her space, but always stayed within reach. "You all right?" he finally asked. Kellia nodded slowly. "Yes." Her voice cracked. The sound was small and broken, but Ethan smiled like it was the most important word he'd ever heard. "Good," he said softly. "You're doing great." She didn't understand everything he said, but she liked how he said it. The ship shook suddenly as it entered the lower atmosphere. Through the glass, Kellia saw colors she'd never imagined: red. Sand, mountain peaks, flashes of fire where battle still raged below. The soldiers were preparing to land at a secure outpost far from the breeding centers. But Kellia knew it wouldn't be safe for long. The Empire didn't let things go. "Not girls like her. Who are they?" she asked, voice raspy. Ethan glanced back. "The ones who took you? They're part of the Janari Dominion. Bioengineers. Your people used to resist them. Then they built those facilities. Called them necessary." "Necessary for what?" Ethan hesitated. His jaw tightened. "War. They used you as breeders. Forced generations to make more hybrids, soldiers with mixed DNA. That's what they wanted from you." Kellia looked down at her hands. She had always known her life had a purpose, just not a kind one. Her body, her blood, it was never hers. "And now?" she whispered. "Now?" Ethan looked her in the eyes. "Now you're free, but they'll come for you, you know that." Kellia nodded. She wasn't naive. She had seen what the scientists did to escapees. She had heard screams in the night, screams that vanished into silence. Ethan sat beside her. "But they'll have to go through me." His voice wasn't angry, it was calm, steady, like stone. "Why?" she asked, her voice trembling. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into his pack and pulled out a ration bar. He broke it in half and handed her the larger piece. "Because nobody helped you before. That's not your fault." She took the food slowly, eyes never leaving his. It wasn't much, but to her, it tasted like the stars. Later that day, the ship landed in a rocky valley surrounded by old mining equipment and rusted fences. The outpost was half destroyed, but defensible. The soldiers quickly set up scanners and turrets. They weren't resting, they were preparing. Kellia stayed close to the fire. The heat felt strange on her skin, too real, too free. She was still cold inside. Still waiting for someone to scream her name and drag her back. Ethan joined her again, this time bringing a medical kit. "Let me look at your wounds," he said gently. She hesitated but didn't flinch. Slowly, she let the cloak fall from her shoulder. Scars, dozens of them, some fresh, some faded. All reminders of what she had survived. Ethan's hands paused over her skin, not touching, just hovering. "Whoever did this." His voice cracked. Kellia tilted her head. "Will they come for me now?" "Yes," he said. "But this time, we'll be ready." She looked at him. Not like before, when she only saw a human stranger, but now as something more. "You say we now." Ethan smiled faintly. "Because I'm with you." That night, Kellia didn't sleep. Something moved inside her chest, fear, yes. But also a flicker of something else. Something she never expected to feel for a human. Trust, and a question she wasn't ready to answer. What if she didn't want to leave his side? The outpost smelled of old fire and metal dust. Most of it was broken walls scorched, roofs half collapsed, but it stood tall enough to hold off the wind and whatever was coming. Soldiers moved like shadows, checking weapons, securing every corner, but inside the main shelter, it was quiet. Kellia sat in a corner, staring at her reflection in a small cracked mirror. Her face looked strange under the soft yellow lights, less pale than before, her eyes less hollow. But her scars were still there, jagged lines down her arms, across her neck, marks of ownership, of pain, of years she would never get back. The door creaked. Ethan walked in carrying something wrapped in cloth. She watched him carefully, still unsure, still learning. He knelt and placed it beside her. I found this in one of the crates. Not much left from the old colonies, but I thought maybe it would help. She unwrapped the cloth slowly. Inside was a folded piece of clothing, a light gray tunic. Soft and clean. Simple, but more comfortable than anything she'd ever worn. Beneath it, a small, broken pendant. Silver. The symbol looked like a tree growing inside a ring. "What is it?" she asked, brushing her fingers over it. "My sister used to wear one like that, before the war." Ethan's voice had changed, quieter. It was a symbol of peace between species. Back when people still believed in that sort of thing. Kellia held the pendant tightly in her hand. "You lost her?" He nodded once. "To the same people who built your prison." Kellia didn't know what to say, so she didn't say anything. She simply looked at him, and he looked back. That moment said more than words. Later that evening, the warning alarms went off. Kellia froze as soldiers rushed into position. Lights flickered red across the outpost. Ethan grabbed his rifle. "Stay inside." "No," she said quietly. "I want to see." He hesitated. But something in her eyes made him nod. He motioned for her to stay low and followed her to the watch window. Outside, distant shapes appeared on the hilltops, hovercrafts and armored vehicles. No colors, just silver and black, the signature of the Dominion. "They found us," Ethan muttered. "Not just me," Kellia whispered. "They want all of us. They won't get you." A voice crackled over the comm. "2 transport ships approaching from the west. Confirmed biomarkers on board. No signs of Mercy Protocol." Ethan cursed under his breath. "They brought hunters." Kellia's blood went cold. The hunters were not guards or soldiers. They were machines built like men, tall, fast, without faces. Created to retrieve or destroy living property. She had never seen one up close, only heard the screams they left behind. "We have to run," she said. "No," Ethan said. "They'll chase us. We hold here. My team's trained for this. We've fought worse. Not like this." Ethan turned to her. "Do you trust me?" She didn't answer right away. Trust was not easy. But he had fed her, wrapped her in warmth, looked at her with eyes that didn't see a test subject. "Yes," she said. He placed a small device in her hand. "If anything happens, press this. It'll activate a beacon. Someone will come for you, even if I don't make it." She stared at it. "I don't want someone else," she whispered. The words were out before she could stop them. He looked at her, stunned for just a second. Then he smiled, just barely but real. "You won't have to." The attack started. Minutes later, the skies turned red with laser fire. The turrets roared. Missiles screamed through the air. Dominion hunters charged the outer walls, tearing through metal. One broke through the gate, its silver body like a nightmare. Ethan fired first straight to the chest, but the machine kept coming. Kellia watched from the shelter, frozen. Her fingers curled around the beacon. She had never believed in heroes. But then she saw him, Ethan, standing alone against that hunter, refusing to back down. For the first time in her life, Kellia felt something rise in her chest. Not fear, not despair. It was something stronger. It was the feeling of not being alone. The outpost burned. Sparks lit the night sky as if the stars themselves were falling. Ethan's squad fought like demons, but the Dominion's machines were endless tall hunters with glowing red cores and faces that didn't blink, didn't feel, didn't stop. Metal claws tore through barriers. Guns melted the sand into glass. Kalia stayed low behind a collapsed support beam, clutching the beacon Ethan had given her. She could hear him yelling commands, firing bursts, covering his men, but then silence. Her heart stopped. She peeked through the cracks. Ethan was down. He wasn't dead. She could see his chest rising, blood running from a deep wound on his side. But the hunter was standing over him, arm raised, blade ready to strike. Kalia didn't think. She ran, sprinting barefoot across the rubble, ignoring the burning metal and the scream in her own lungs. The hunter saw her, but too late. She grabbed the steel rod from the wreckage and swung it with all her strength. The blow did nothing. The hunter turned. She stood between it and Ethan, panting, trembling, bleeding. "Leave him," she said. "Take me back." The machine paused. Its scanners flickered across her. It knew her, recognized her genetic tag. She was what they'd come for. Kalia dropped the metal rod and lifted her arms. The hunter stepped forward, lowering its blade. It raised a small containment field device, ready to capture her again. But Ethan groaned behind her. "No," he whispered. "Don't. Do it." Kalia turned her head slightly. "You saved me." Then she looked at the hunter. And for the first time in her life, she refused to be a prisoner again. She grabbed the device in its hand and slammed it against the hunter's chest. Over its glowing red core, sparks erupted. The machine staggered, confused. Before it could react, Kalia yanked Ethan's dropped sidearm from the sand and fired once, twice, 3 times straight into the core. The hunter exploded from the inside. She was thrown back by the blast, crashing beside Ethan. Silence. Returned to the field, broken only by the groans of injured soldiers and the burning wind. Kalia crawled to Ethan's side. He was alive, barely, his face pale, jaw clenched. "You idiot," he muttered, coughing. "You were supposed to run." She smiled faintly through her tears. "You gave me a reason not to." More soldiers arrived, dragging the wounded into the med bay. One of them pulled Ethan onto a stretcher. Another looked at Kalia, surprised. "Was that you who took down that hunter?" She nodded slowly. He gave a short laugh. "Remind me never to get on your bad side." They treated Ethan inside the shelter. Kalia sat outside, watching the horizon, still holding the broken sidearm in her lap. Her hands shook not from fear, but from something new. She had saved someone. She had made a choice, not to be used, not to be owned, but to fight back. Later that night, when the fires had been put out and the wounded were resting, Ethan opened his eyes. She was already there, sitting beside him, watching every breath. He tried to speak, but she touched his arm gently. "I'm not afraid anymore," she said. He looked into her eyes, seeing something different, now not the quiet, broken girl from the breeding cell, but someone alive, awake. "Good," he whispered, "because this isn't over." "I know," she said. "They'll come again. They will." She leaned in close, her voice low. "Then let's make them regret ever making me." That night, Kalia didn't sleep. She began to learn how to hold a weapon, how to load a rifle, how to read terrain maps. She trained beside the others, silent but focused. Because the war wasn't finished, and the girl they had imprisoned for breeding, she was becoming something no one ever expected, a warrior. The training yard was little more than a flat patch of cracked ground beside the outpost, surrounded by broken fencing and scorched vehicles. But to Kalia, it felt like something sacred. Each morning she walked barefoot over the dust, listening, watching, learning. She no longer flinched when men raised their voices. She no longer hesitated when handed a weapon. The girl who had once cowered behind glass now stood straight, her back strong, her eyes sharp. Ethan watched her from the shade of the supply tent, a fresh scar running down his jaw from the battle days before. He was healing, slowly. The pain still made him wince, but it didn't stop him from walking or teaching. He refused to rest when Kellia trained. "She's picking it up faster than some of our recruits," one of the soldiers said. "She's got something to fight for," Ethan replied. That afternoon, he called her over. She approached quickly, sweat on her forehead, the rifle still gripped in her hand like it was a part of her. "You know," Ethan said, "you don't have to do this." Kellia raised a brow. "Do what?" "Become like us, train, fight. I freed you so you could live, not turn into another soldier." She looked down at the rifle, then back at him. "They built me to be used. Now I'm building me to choose." Her words were simple, but the power behind them struck Ethan deep. He nodded once. "Then I'll make sure you're ready." Later that night, a small scout drone buzzed through the outer sensors and was immediately shot down. But it was enough to set the outpost on alert. The Dominion was still watching. Ethan called a meeting in the war room, a half-destroyed operations center with flickering maps and manual switches. Kellia stood beside him, arms crossed, listening. "They know she's alive," Ethan said, "and they won't stop until they drag her back." "Then we move," the squad leader said. "There's a transport hub 100 kilometers north, old jump station. If we can reach it, we can signal the fleet." "It's risky," another soldier said. "We'll be exposed." Athene looked to Kellia. "What do you think?" She didn't hesitate. "They will come no matter what, so let's make it a path of fire." The squad stared at her in silence. Then a few nodded. It was decided. At dawn they would move. The journey began with smoke still in the sky. Kellia rode in the rear transport with Ethan and two others, her rifle strapped across her chest. The vehicle bumped and groaned as it crossed the rough terrain, but her eyes stayed fixed on the road ahead. They passed through the ruins of an old village, stone buildings half sunk into the sand. Kellia recognized some of the symbols on the folly walls. "This place," she said softly. "My mother might have been from here." Ethan turned. "You remember her?" "No, only her name, Lyria. They took me from her when I was small." She touched the faded marking a tree with curling roots and stars in the branches. "They called her a rebel," Kellia whispered. "Maybe that's why I was never afraid of the fire." Ethan looked at her with something between awe and sorrow. "You've always had this in you," he said. "Not because they made you, but because she did." A voice crackled over the comm. "Contact, 2 miles out. Unmarked vessel approaching from the south." The convoy picked up speed. But it was too late. From the ridgeline, black Dominion hovercrafts descended like vultures. Gunfire erupted, red streaks flashing across the sky. The convoy split, one vehicle burst into flames. Kellia grabbed Ethan's arm. "We stay together." He nodded. "Always." They jumped from the transport just as it tipped, sliding into cover behind a metal slab. "Fall back to the ruins." Ethan shouted. The squad moved as one, retreating through crumbling walls. Kellia ducked beside him, returning fire with calm. Measured shots. Her hands didn't shake. Her breath stayed even. Then she saw it. A figure tall, armored, with glowing blue veins under pale metal skin. A prime hunter. Stronger than the one before. Smarter. It locked eyes with her. She knew what it meant. It hadn't come for the soldiers. It had come for her. Kellia stepped into the open, facing it. Ethan shouted, "Kellia, get back." But she didn't move. She was done running. She was ready for war. The prime hunter stepped forward, its heavy feet cracking the broken stone beneath. It was taller than any soldier, nearly twice Kellia's height, and its armor shifted with a faint electric hum. Its single eye glowed like a small sun, fixed on her alone. Kellia raised her rifle. She knew it wouldn't be enough. Ethan ran up behind her, panting. "You can't face that alone." She didn't look at him. "I'm not alone." Behind them, the soldiers scrambled into position, forming a semicircle around the ruins. Smoke and heat filled the air. The Dominion's assault ships circled overhead, scanning the battlefield, waiting for their moment. The Prime Hunter lifted its arm. The same containment device as before flickered to life, only this one was larger, faster, smarter. "I was property," Kellia whispered. "To them, I still am." Ethan moved beside her. "You're not property." "To me." The Hunter's voice cracked through the air, metallic and cold. "Subject, Kellia, you are a genetic asset. Return, or all life forms here will be terminated." Kellia slowly stepped forward. "No." Ethan grabbed her arm, but she gently pulled free. "I have to end this," she said. "They don't stop, Ethan. They never stop." "Not unless I make them." The Hunter stepped closer. Its containment field whirred, ready to trap her again. But Kellia wasn't surrendering. She reached into her belt and pulled out a small device, a field disruptor, stolen from the Dominion cache earlier that day. She'd studied its core. Understood it. Modified it. "I was made in a lab," she said, staring the Hunter down. "But I learned from humans." Then she activated the device. A high-pitched whine split the air. The Hunter froze its system, struggling to adjust. The containment field collapsed in a flicker of light. Ethan's eyes widened. "What did you just do?" Kellia didn't answer. She ran toward the Hunter, dodging the swipe of its claw, and leapt up onto a broken pillar beside it. Before it could recalculate, she jumped again right onto its back. "Subject detained, terminate." She slammed the disruptor against its power core. The explosion didn't come right away, but a deep pulse spread through its metal shell, forcing it to its knees. Kellia jumped clear just before the shockwave blew the Hunter apart. The force knocked her back. Debris flew everywhere. She hit the ground hard, her vision going white. When it cleared, she was on her side, ears ringing. And then Ethan was there, pulling her up, gripping her shoulders. "Are you okay?" She nodded weakly. It worked. He laughed, relief washing over his bloodied face. "You insane, brilliant girl." But the battle wasn't over. The other Dominion forces began to retreat, some fleeing in panic after the Prime's destruction, others regrouping. A voice crackled on comms. "The jump hub is just ahead. If we reach it, we can call for orbital backup." Ethan turned to Kellia. "Can you move?" She stood, legs shaky but steady. "Let's finish this." The squad moved quickly now, weaving through the jagged terrain toward the old jump station, nestled between cliffs. The Dominion was behind them, scattered. Their main weapon was gone, but Kellia knew they'd return in greater numbers. As they reached the final ridge, the sky split open with a strange light. A Dominion command cruiser appeared above, twice the size of any vessel they had seen before. Its engines roared like a beast, and its comms blared one chilling word: recover the asset, terminate all resistance. Kellia's blood ran cold. This wasn't just a mission now. It was a final order. She looked at Ethan. He was watching her, ready to die for her. And she knew in that moment, she couldn't let that happen. Not to him. Not to any of them. The old jump station doors creaked open as the squad activated the ancient terminal. Inside, the room lit up with soft blue light, quiet, peaceful compared to the chaos outside. Kellia stepped onto the platform. "This station can send one signal before it shuts down forever," the technician said. Ethan looked at her. "What do you want to say?" Kellia closed her eyes, then spoke clearly. "This is Kellia. I am not your property. I am not your tool. I am not your slave. I am free. And I will fight anyone who tries to take that away." Again, The signal launched into orbit, echoing into the stars. The Dominion cruiser above paused, and the world held its breath. The stars above seemed to dim as the Dominion cruiser hovered silently, its cannons charging with electric fury. Everyone at the jump station stood frozen, eyes on the sky, breath held. Even the wind paused. Then the voice returned hollow and cruel. Subject Kelia has declared independence. Marked for total elimination. The ship began to descend. Kelia gripped her rifle. Her arm still ached from the fight. Her side burned from the fall, but her heart had never been clearer. They would rather see her destroyed than free. That truth gave her strength. Ethan stepped beside her, placing a hand lightly on her back. You don't stand alone anymore. Soldiers formed a circle around her, weapons raised. This wasn't just about Kelia anymore. This was about all of them, every species the Dominion had used, broken, thrown away. She was a symbol now, a choice, a defiance. The technician called out, "We've got 15 seconds before they're in range." One shot left in the jump beacon battery. Kelia turned to him. "Can we target something with it?" "Maybe, if we reroute the charge, but you'd have to overload the emitter directly." Ethan shook his head. "It would kill whoever stays behind to fire it." No one spoke. Kelia stepped forward. "I'll do it." "No," Ethan said, grabbing her wrist. "There has to be another way." She looked at him. "They built me to obey. But I'm choosing this." He stared at her, shaking his head in disbelief. "You don't owe anyone your life." "I'm not giving it up," she whispered. "I'm giving it meaning." And then he did something no one expected. He kissed her. It was soft, desperate. "Human, I didn't free you just to lose you," he said, his voice cracking. Tears welled in Kelia's eyes, but she didn't step back. She touched his cheek, brushed the scar along his jaw. "You didn't lose me," she said. "You found me." And then she turned, walked up to the old beacon's control core, and placed her hands on the interface. The ancient system sparked under her touch. She connected the final cables, overriding safety locks. The cruiser descended lower, now fully locked on the jump station. Red lights glowed on its underbelly. Firing in 5, 4. Kelia screamed as the energy surged through her body, but she held on, gritting her teeth. The charge built, faster than expected, brighter than anyone had seen before. 3, Ethan shouted from behind. "Now, Kelia, do it." 2, Kelia pushed the final command. The beacon burst. A brilliant column of energy shot skyward, hitting the cruiser dead center in its core. The Dominion ship shuddered, systems failing. Its engines glowed hot, then exploded in a deafening roar. Metal rained from the sky. The ground shook for miles. Then, silence. Ethan and the squad rushed into the chamber. Smoke filled the room, lights flickering, panels sparking. And there, lying at the center of the control floor, was Kelia, still. Ethan dropped to his knees beside her, scooping her into his arms. "Kelia, no. No, please." Her skin was burned, her body limp. Then a breath. A weak one, but real. Her eyes fluttered open, barely. "You're still here," she whispered. "Always," he choked out. "I told you." She smiled. Faintly, her voice nearly gone. "I'm free." And then she passed out, safe in his arms. Days later, word of the battle spread. Other breeding centers began to riot. Other species rose up. The Dominion fractured. And Kelia? She woke days later in a real bed, beside real windows, where sunlight touched her skin for the first time without walls or needles. Ethan was sitting beside her. She turned to him and said softly, "What now?" He smiled. "Now we live." And for the first time in her life, Kelia believed him.